What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you my second place finish with Raidraptors. Now I put this deck together, I wanted to give it a run out of locals just to kind of see how it interacted. I made a couple of changes, and what I'm going to do with this video is I'm going to take you through exactly what I played, and then explain some of the changes that I'm considering making, and I'll also show you my side deck at the end of it as well, so you can kind of see exactly what would be needed to take this to your local environment. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. So we're going to start off with our starters of the deck. Now the main starter of the deck is Tribute Lanas. What I would actually prefer to be my main starter is actually Raider's Wing, and the reason for that is as soon as you get Raider's Wing plus an extender, this allows you to pretty much climb all the way into the Arsenal Falcon. And when you get to Arsenal, that's the only point when it can be interrupted is if they Ash Blossom you at that point. But hopefully by that time, one of your extenders is probably going to be something like Fuzzy Lanius, which means you can chain block it as well, which can be very, very nice because you would have got to a point where you would have tried to use Fuzzy Lanius' effect as you've built up, and they might have tried to Ash that, thinking that they couldn't deal with the Arsenal Falcon. Now, if they know how to deal with that a little bit differently, then that's something you need to keep in mind of, and that's when you need another extender. But what this gives you is it gives you full-on protection from being targeted, which is really, really nice. I mean, you don't need to worry about Imperm or Veiler. Once you get to a certain point as well, when you do get nibbed, you're getting nibbed at a point where you'll still get the Arsenal Falcon to go into your Ultimate Falcon, and it still allows you to keep playing. Tribute Lanis, of course, is the basic starter because it's your one-card starter, which is why you're also playing cards in the form of Mimicry, and of course Foolish Burial to get to it as well. So I'm just going to show you these cards here because technically that's what you're really going to be using them for more times than not, is you're going to Foolish the Mimicry, banish the Mimicry, search out Raider's Wing if you've got an extender, or Tribute Lanis if you don't. So keep that in mind as well in the matchup as well. More times than not, if they choose to go Mimicry and then they search out a Tribute Lanis, that's probably when they haven't got an extender in the hand, because more times than not, if they've got search out a Raider's Wing or they search out an extender, that would personally be the play that I would choose to go for. It just gives you so much more protection as you're trying to climb higher. This card was like a mini MVP of the entire deck. Once I got this and was able to start making my XYZ plays, I felt completely protected, and the only time I ever felt in danger is if they had Nibiru, and even then if you went to the right plays first, you're still able to kind of extend your board. Not to forget as well, this also has a graveyard effect that if you need an extender while it is in the grave, you can bring it back, and that's kind of one of the ones that you can detach it off of the back of your of the Arsenal Falcon, and if they do want to Ash Blossom you, if you feel that they've got an Ash but they don't have an Imperm or a Veiler, then of course you can kind of change it around that way. Speaking of those, as a little bit of a preview, and I'll speak about this a little bit later on, this is actually a massive MVP, because if they did Ash me, I was able to talents, look at their hand, and then know what they didn't have, and then I was able to get rid of any kind of fretful cards like an Imperm, like a Veiler, or even a Nibiru, and then I was able to continue my plays as well. So I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Another one of the main starters, and what I mean by main starters is these are cards that don't special summon themselves in any form whatsoever, is the Noir Lanus. Now this is actually really good in the graveyard to extend itself or being able to banish it to increase your Raidraptor levels, which is really nice sometimes to skip over your rank 4s and go directly into your rank 5s. And then on top of that as well, it does have the ability that you can target another Raidraptor you control and then add a monster that is a different level, or a Raidraptor that is a different level from the deck to the hand. There were times where I was actually highly considering playing this down to 1, and the only reason you do that is for the pure fact that that's where I put in a third Raider's Wing, because in scenarios I'd much rather see this than this, but 2 and 2 worked out quite nicely. And then of course we've got Trill Bloom Vulture. This is quite like Raider's Wing in the sense that it's a really, really good card, but it's only a really good card if you have another Raiders Knight, like another Raidraptor. If it's on its own, it's completely useless because, yeah, okay, you can normal summon it and then you can extend a card from the hand or anything else, but if you have a Raidraptor, being able to special summon this down plus another Raidraptor is insane. So this plus Tribute is really good because then even if they do stop Tribute, you're like, okay, cool, I've still got a rank 4 play. You'll see in some of the duels that I actually played that there'll be times where I use this to go to a Tribute and they would stop the Tribute Lanius from sending from deck to the grave. I was like, okay, cool. Start making my XYZ plays, and you'd either run the risk of, okay, if they've got an Imperm and Veiler, that is it, or you'd overlay both of these, go into your 4 Strix, try to do your 4 Strix play, and then see if they interact with you there. Now, the one of the biggest question marks in the entire deck is the Fuzzy Lanius. Now, the reason this is one of the biggest question marks of the entire deck, in my opinion, is because this is the only one that restricts you to playing only Raidraptors for the entire turn, when you want to use either its effect, either the summon or the search of itself. So there are times that this is the one that if you wanted to play other cards in the deck, if you wanted to go down the Phantom Knight route, if you want to go down just like a generic SP route or a Super Poly route, this would be the card that makes way. Every time I go to cut this card, I'm like, okay, I'm going to cut it. I'll do one more test. and it is actually like the game saver. There's so many times that this card puts in so much work. Like when you XYZ summon and then detach this as a material, on the new chain, you get to go chain link 1 this, chain link 2 that, and this allows you to chain block, which is really, really important because that then gives you the ability to search out another extender if you haven't already used this effect to extend and go from there. There were times where I was actually using this as a, cutting this down to 2, because then there'll be times where I special summon this out of the deck from either the link 2 or of course searching it off. And then once you've special summoned it, that's pretty much it. So it's just a free extender on the board, really, really important. But like I said, this is the one that I want to try a version without it, just to see how varied I can be. But playing pure is pretty much fine. And then, of course, triple strangle Lanas. This is the most expensive Raidraptor of the entire deck, because it's the only one that hasn't had a recent reprint or a recent print that is of a restricted rarity in the form of being a super rare. So this one currently sits at, I believe, between £10 to £15 a copy, which is absolutely wild. So I really do hope we get this as reprinted so that everyone can play this on a massively budget scale. Yes, the deck is relatively budget itself, but when you are considering playing 3 cards that sit between £10 to £15 each, straight away that then covers the cost of the rest of the monsters you might want to be playing. But the reason this card is so good is because if you control a dark monster, you get to special summon it, and then if you control an XYZ monster that has a dark XYZ monster as material, you get to target a level 4 or lower Raidraptor in the graveyard and special summon it, so it becomes its own rank 4 when it's really, really nice. You just need to make sure that it has a dark XYZ monster as material, which more times than not is when you're making your Arsenal Falcon, so it's one of them extended cards. So it's like you've already got where you want to or need to go, and this just lets you go that little bit further. Soog is pretty much an honorary Raidraptor, like Dark level 4 Winged Beast. If you normal or special summon a Winged Beast monster, you get to normal summon this card as an additional normal summon, which is really, really important. So it's during the main phase, if you normal or special or Winged Beast, you can reveal this card, and then immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon a Soog, which will be itself. You can foolish a second copy of itself so you don't brick on it, but ultimately I think once you've kind of gone through it, you don't mind. And then this can be quite helpful for protecting any on-field trigger effects. So if you special summon a monster that goes, okay, cool, effect to do something, you go, cool, chain link 2 will be Soog to protect it. So this one's really important, which is why you play F3. And then for the one-offs, you've got the one Pain Lanas, so it can summon itself down by targeting a Raidraptor. You take damage equal to its attack or defense, whichever is lowest you get to choose, and then you manipulate its level to become that level 4. The reason this is good is it's one of the targets that Noir Lanus can search because it's a level 1 and becomes a level 4. And then, of course, you've got Heal Eagle. This is in here to be able to recycle your spells and traps in the graveyard, which does come up if you need to go for a double towers or if you go for the trap card itself. I like to play the one Singing Lanas. It's completely cuttable if you want to. What's really nice about this is when you make an XYZ, you summon it down, you've still got that extended to keep making your plays, because one of your biggest choke points is, of course, Raider's Knight, which is why it's so important to try and get Raider's Wing under it so it's protected from all the targeted effects. But then there are times when you do need to be able to go, okay, cool, I've got an XYZ on the board, special summon down Singing Lanas rather than having to control a Wing Beast, and then you control Wing Beast and you're allowed to continue making your plays. It is very situational, which is why it could arguably be cut if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you. Then for the Raidraptor spells, I've got the one Roost, the one Skip Force, the one Rise Rancart, and then the trap card, of course, of the Glorious Bright. All of these, I think, are basic staples. I don't think you'd be playing anything less than these. Like, I wouldn't say cutting any of these. I did side out this a couple of times when I knew I was going second. I was like, right, okay, well, I want to be able to consistently get to Arsenal Falcon to move for an OTK. And the cards that I was putting in were able to help me break my opponent's board, which is why it was a nice little sacrifice. Roost is insane. The fact that Roost can get any of your spells and traps while also constantly keep recycling your Raidraptor monsters is really important, and then drawing you into cards you need. For the hand traps of this build, of course, we went with Ash Blossoms, Drolls, Double Veilers, and Triple Imperms. Pretty straightforward and simple on your hand trap lineup on that one. You could play 3 Veilers if you want to. You can cut the Veilers out for DD Crows, for Ghost Spells, whatever is specific to your environment. And then one of the MVPs of the deck was Triple Tactic Talents. And the reason this was so important is because there were so many times when my opponent was hand trapping me early doors, like when I was activating Lanius, and I already had an extender. So you were basically using Lanius or Tribute Lanius as a bait out. And then once they took that bait, you'd go, okay, cool, talents, look at the hand. If they had an Imperm or a Veiler, that was going back to deck, and I was like, cool, I'm clear to make my Raider's Knight and go my full combo, which is absolutely fine. And then there was times going second, you could steal their monsters, so it just had a really nice balance of first and second. The only time this card ever really hurt me was when my opponent D-shifted me during standby, and I was like, yeah, okay, cool, they're not really going to be activating anything else from that point on, so talents is relatively useless. Other than that, Very, very good card. Worked out incredibly well for the deck because it can play through so many hand traps. But there are times where it's like, okay, cool. Well, if I take the first hand trap and eat the first hand trap, activate talents, and then guarantee they haven't got a second one that's going to be that damaging for me. Like there was in the Red Dragon Archery matchup, I activated talents. They had Droll and Magnamut. I was like, okay, well, I'll get rid of the Magnamut because I can deal with the Droll, and that was like massively helpful because even if I had a Call by the Grave, I couldn't do anything with the Magnamut, but talents in it was obviously just as effective. And obviously Call by the Grave. So talents was like a last minute add, which is why the deck is a 42 card list rather than a bang on 40 card list. Arguably, you could put the Veiler out to make it a 40 deck, or the talents is up to you, but the talents just worked out incredibly well for me, which is why I went with it. Moving on to the extra deck, this is staple. I'm not really going to talk too much about this, so we'll go from highest to lows. So 2 Rising Rebellions. You can double towers, so you make a towers during your turn, make a towers during your opponent's turn. Pretty standard on that one. Ultimate Falcon, not much more to say about that. Arsenal Falcon, I'm always highly tempted to play this at 2, but then you can keep recycling it with Roost, so that's something to keep in mind. Bracestrix, so we're going to be rocking 2 Bracestrix. I don't know why I'm playing 2 now. Like the more and more I think about it, it's like I don't think I really need to. The only time you need a second is if they get rid of the first one before you can use this effect, and then you have to make a second. So I suppose it's just like a safety of have it and not need it, then need it and not have it kind of scenario. One card that you definitely need 2 of course, is Raider's Knight. Now, Raider's Knight, of course, is a hell once per turn, but the idea is the fact that it's treated as a Raidraptor monster, and this is the one that's going to get you into your Bracestrix, and that's the one that's going to unlock the rest of your plays, is massively important. There are times, of course, like I said, if they stop your first Raider's Knight, you make a second one, you can still go through your Bracestrix plays and everything else you need to. 2 Forcestrix. I wouldn't feel that I need 3. If I felt that I needed 3 of anything, it was probably Ystrix I felt that I needed 3 of. But honestly, I feel that the only thing that this deck is missing is like a link-free Raidraptor. The issue with the Fuzzy Lanius route, like I've said before, is that you lock yourself into Raidraptors. So when you're doing that, your link plays are very restricted, and there's times where it's like, okay, cool, well, you need to go into a second Ystrix just to clear a monster off the board, and that's where I'd arguably be like, all right, I really wish I had something like an SP Little Knight or just another generic link monster that was going to be effective for me that allowed me to gain more board presence. Satellite Cannon, I used this once, really, really good card. It was just another option if you can't get into your Rising Rebellion through your quick play spell. You can go into this. This can obviously burn your opponent as well as being able to do more, reduce their attack as well. Not burn your opponent, sorry, destroy your opponent's monsters. Spells and traps, sorry. Rising Rebellion is destroy all cards, and then this would give you the ability to reduce their attack by 800. The last 2 cards that are not Raidraptors that I played is the 1 Art Rebellion, so just go into Raider's Knight, Art Rebellion, OTK 1 Punch, and then of course the 1 Evil Swarm Nightmare. I did consider Baguska, but the issue with Baguska is because it's not dark, you will 99.999% of the time dark clock yourself, so you're safer going in for a Nightmare, and you will 80% of the time Raidraptor lock yourself, which is why there isn't anything else in here. But arguably, I'd probably want to be looking at playing an SP Little Knight, maybe in space of a second Brave or a second Rebellion. Like, you'd have to sacrifice something just to kind of let to see if it works. And I just wanted that generic card. Even if I didn't do that, something like a Zeus or something like a Typhon would obviously be quite helpful as well, because there were times where I was like, right, okay, I've burnt through quite a lot of resource. I haven't got that ability to keep ranking up as much as I would like to. I need a generic card, or I haven't used Fuzzy this entire turn. I want to use something rather than going into a second Ystrix, or I've already got a Ystrix in the graveyard. I want to be able to recycle it in a different way. What else can I go for? So that's it for the main and the extra. I'll just quickly show you my side deck so you have a bit of an idea of what I was kind of utilising. Because my locals was very varied, so like I've already mentioned, there was Yugioh, there was Raidraptors, there was Fire King Snake Eye, Ashen, Voiceless Voice, trying to think what else there was, Crystal Beast, Illusion, Chimera Illusion. So like a very wide range, so you have to kind of be more prepared. Like you couldn't just go, right, this deck is built to deal with fire matchup, because if you do that, unless you're going to an event where it will be predominantly fire matchups, you're going to lose the other rogue matchups. So I went with 2 Nibiru, 2 Ghost Bell. I wanted to try out Phantasme, and the reason for this was I was like, okay, well, if I go second and I Phantasme my opponent's board, not only can I kind of try and fix my hand, but it also sets me up with some targeted protection that if I do want to go through my plays without going through Raider's Wing, I have that built in. So I wanted to try it out, never put it in. It was obviously going to be good in the Fire King matchup or the Fire matchup, but in the Voiceless Voice matchup, not so great. Not so great in the Yugioh matchup, and not great at all in the Red Dragon Archery matchup. So give and take. And then I went with the standard of Lightning Storms with Dusters and 2 Cosmic Cyclone, just kind of deal with those back rows when they popped up. Yeah, it is what it is. And then finished off with Triple Evenly Matched, just board breakers. The only thing that I would consider, and that's where I'd take out the Phantasmes, is either Droplets or Darkworld No Mores, just for those times when your opponent does put on an insanely powerful board and you're like, right, okay, I don't really want to be playing through 3 or 4 forms of interruption. I need to be able to deal with it. But more times than not, those 3 or 4 interruptions are coming from your opponent's hand traps. So you need to be a little bit careful. You could put in Crossout Designator, but I feel that Crossout Designator is one of the ones where it's like, you're better off maining it or just not bothering. But that's just my personal preference. Like, I'd be like, okay, well, I could put it in the main deck, but I don't think there's enough space for it. And the deck can play through quite a lot. Like I've already said, it can play through a lot of hand traps. Like there was a lot of times where either I was first hand trapped and then I talenced and got rid of the second one, or I was double hand trapped, but I was still able to build a fairly decent board that my opponent couldn't break. So there's loads of different options you can look into, loads of different options you can try around with. And I really do enjoy the deck. Because I thought initially when I put this together, I was like, oh, cool, this deck's very linear, it just gets to a towers, game over. But it wasn't. I actually found myself at locals just... It was more challenging, which was nice, because it was nice to be like, okay, cool, I now need to adapt my playstyle. It isn't a direct one route, get to this guy. It's like, okay, well, I've been interrupted. How can I still get back to that one route using different options? Which is really kind of cool to work around with. And that's why I felt that there was more value in Raider's Wing to be able to deal with multiple forms of interruption. Like in one of the matchups, my opponent had a Fenrir, and I was like, okay, cool, Raider's Wing, Extender, anything? Nothing. Okay, cool, Overlay. And then from that point on, because they were holding it back to deal with a big of an issue without understanding what Raiders did, or you would use Balloon Vulture, anything on res? No. Okay, cool. Normal summon Raiders Wing, overlay with Raiders Wing, and then from that point on, I knew my XYZ was protected. So there's a lot to work with, which is why I really, really rated this card. Anyway, that is it for the entire profile. If you do have any questions at all, by all means, please let me know in the comments down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. But for now, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.